The letter sat on my desk for exactly 29 minutes before I finally opened it. It was sleek, corporate, the kind of envelope you'd expect from a company that had moved on from its scrappy startup roots and embraced its new identity as a well-established player in the industry. Green Tech Solutions had changed a lot since I first started here, and so had I. I'd gone from an entry-level assistant to the director of operations in 12 years, earning every step along the way. I had spent sleepless nights, missed countless family events, and poured my soul into building the systems that kept this place running smoothly. It felt like every fiber of my being had been woven into the fabric of Green Tech. I had a lot of pride in what we'd built together, and I never questioned my place here, until now. The company had grown quickly under new leadership. When Jonathan Rivers, the founder, was replaced by Ben Lambert as CEO, the changes were subtle at first. Ben had been brought in with the goal of modernizing the company, pushing it to scale quickly. At first, I saw it as a challenge, a chance to rise with the company, to work harder, think smarter, and achieve new heights. But it wasn't long before I began noticing cracks in the foundation. Ben wasn't the type of leader to connect with employees on a personal level. He didn't have the time. He was about results, numbers, and the bottom line. I could see how he'd reshaped Green Tech, turning it from a company that cared about its people into one driven by pure profit and growth. It wasn't the same place it used to be. The vibe, the family atmosphere Jonathan had fostered had started to fade, replaced by a cold, corporate drive for efficiency and bottom-line results. The letter in my hands confirmed my suspicions. The words on the page were simple but blunt. We regret to inform you that your position has been eliminated as part of a restructuring initiative. You have 48 hours to submit your resignation, or we will terminate your employment. I read the letter again, then again, and still, it didn't seem real. After everything I had done, after all the systems I'd built, the late nights, the stressful deadlines, this was how it ended? Not with a conversation, not with an acknowledgement of my contributions, but with a cold, impersonal letter and an ultimatum: resign or be fired. As if my 12 years of work could be boiled down to a 2-day decision. The letter wasn't just about losing my job. It felt like the company was telling me I didn't matter anymore. I looked at the envelope again, the company's logo glaring back at me. It used to mean something to me. It used to be a symbol of pride, of everything I had worked for. Now it felt like a brand, a mark of corporate indifference. I thought about the meetings I had been left out of, the projects I had been removed from, the way Ben's smile had changed whenever I walked past him. That icy look, the one that never quite met my eyes, told me everything I needed to know. He'd already made up his mind, and I was just a casualty of his plan to take Green Tech to the next level. To maximize profits, to grow quickly, to cut out anything that didn't directly serve those goals. The phone rang, breaking me from my thoughts. It was Ben's assistant, asking if I could come to the executive suite. I looked at the clock. 4:15 p.m. I knew exactly what was coming, but I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed my resignation letter, tucked it into my briefcase, and made my way to the office that had once felt like home. When I walked into Ben's office, he was standing by the window, his silhouette sharp against the skyline. Charlotte, the CFO, sat silently beside him, her eyes fixed on the papers in front of her. She didn't even look up as I entered. Ben turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Evan?" he said, his voice flat like he was reading from a script. "I assume you've read the letter?" "I have," I replied, my voice steady despite the weight in my chest. "What do you need from me?" "You know the deal," Ben said. "What's your decision? You can leave voluntarily, or we'll make it official. But I need to know now." I glanced at Charlotte. I had worked with her for years. We'd been through some of the toughest projects together, and I had always considered her a friend. But now she couldn't even meet my gaze. It was as if we had never shared the same struggles, the same victories. It was all business now, and I was just another number to be cut. "I'll resign," I said, keeping my voice calm, though the words tasted bitter. There was no point in dragging this out. I knew what was happening. I knew what Ben was trying to do, and I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me beg. Ben's lips curled into a small smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Smart move," he said. We'll need your resignation letter by tomorrow morning. Can you do that? It's already done, I replied, standing up and walking out of his office without waiting for a response. As I made my way back to my desk, I passed some of the people who had worked under me for years. Sarah from operations, Michael from customer support, Sophie from logistics. They had no idea what was happening. Tomorrow morning, they would get an email from HR, the most impersonal of communications, announcing my departure as if I had never existed. I sat down at my desk for the last time, staring at the letter in front of me. The weight of everything I had built, everything I had given, was finally starting to sink in. I had to do something. I couldn't let this go. Not like this. I needed to protect myself, and I needed to make sure Green Tech didn't get away with treating me this way. The truth was, I wasn't just walking away. I was taking something with me, something that could change everything. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, moving through the motions as if everything was normal, when I knew nothing about this situation was normal. The quiet hum of my office, the soft clatter of keyboards, the low murmur of voices in the hallways, all of it felt distant. The weight of the resignation letter in my hand, the certainty that I was being discarded, lingered like a storm cloud overhead. I was already walking away from Green Tech, but the thought of what had happened, how it happened, and what came next kept churning in my mind. I knew I had to be strategic about this. I wasn't going to leave empty-handed, not after everything I had given. I needed to protect myself. The first step was obvious. I had to make sure I had everything documented. I opened my filing cabinets, pulling out years of notes, files, and records, every process, every system I had worked on, every decision I had made that shaped Green Tech into what it was today. It felt almost surreal as I flipped through the pages, knowing that all of this, all the work I had done, was now being dismissed without a second thought. But I wasn't going to let it disappear. If they thought they could just toss me aside, they were wrong. As I pulled together everything I could, a thought struck me. What if there was more? What if the irregularities I had uncovered months ago during a routine audit were just the tip of the iceberg? I had already noticed some discrepancies, but I hadn't fully investigated them. I felt a strange calm come over me as I grabbed the audit report. It was time to dig deeper. I pored over the numbers again, line by line, cross-referencing vendor payments and internal transactions. That was when it hit me. Ben and Charlotte had been siphoning money out of Green Tech for months through inflated vendor contracts and fake consulting fees. At first, I thought it was a small mistake, an error in judgment, but now it was clear it was deliberate. They had funneled millions of dollars into shell companies that they controlled. The more I dug, the more I realized the scale of it. The total amount? $2.5 million. I felt my heart race. How long had they been doing this? How much more had they hidden? And why hadn't anyone else seen it? This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about exposing what was happening to the company, to everyone who had worked there, to the people who had trusted them. I wasn't going to be the silent victim. I was going to make sure they faced the consequences. I needed legal help. I didn't have the luxury of sitting around waiting for Green Tech to process my resignation. I couldn't let them get away with this. I picked up the phone and called a lawyer I had worked with in the past, Sharon Riverside. Sharon was sharp, methodical, and knew exactly how to handle corporate disputes. She'd been a lifeline for a few colleagues of mine in the past, and now I needed her. Sharon picked up on the first ring. "Evan, what's going on?" she asked, her voice professional but concerned. "I've been forced out of Green Tech," I said, getting straight to the point. "But I need your help. I've found something big. They've been embezzling money from the company, and I think it goes deeper than I initially thought." There was a brief pause before Sharon spoke again. "Tell me everything." I explained what I had found, how the company had been funneling money through false vendor payments, how Ben and Charlotte had been hiding funds under the guise of consulting contracts, and how it all seemed to have been going on for over a year. As I spoke, I could hear Sharon's wheels turning. She was already thinking about the next steps. "I'm going to need a full breakdown of the amounts you've uncovered, and I'll need copies of the audit and any correspondence you have," she said. "We can't just go in without the evidence. This is going to take some time, but if what you're saying is true, they're going to pay for it." I nodded, though I knew she couldn't see me. I'll get everything to you as soon as possible. The rest of the evening felt like a blur. I gathered every document I could, every email, every invoice, every report that could back up what I was claiming. I didn't sleep much that night, working into the early hours of the morning. The more I dug, the more disgusted I became. How had I not seen it sooner? How had I been so blind to what was happening in front of me? But the truth was, I had been too focused on doing my job, on building systems that worked, to pay attention to what was happening behind the scenes. By morning, I had everything Sharon needed. I packed it all up and sent it over to her. I knew the battle was just beginning, but at least now I had the power to fight back. I wasn't going to let Ben and Charlotte get away with this. I wasn't just walking away. I was going to make sure they paid for what they had done. The next day, I handed in my resignation letter. It was short, formal, and clear. I wasn't going to waste time on pleasantries. As I left Green Tech for the last time, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was over, yes, but it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new, something better. And no matter what happened next, I knew I was going to be just fine. The following days felt like a blur, each one blending into the next as I dove headfirst into the legal battle. Sharon was a whirlwind, handling everything with the precision of someone who had spent years in corporate law, knowing exactly how to expose the cracks in Green Tech's foundation. The documents I had provided her became the blueprint for our case. I spent hours sitting with her, going over every detail, making sure we hadn't missed anything. The financial irregularities were worse than I had even realized. This wasn't just about Ben and Charlotte embezzling funds. It was a systematic exploitation of the company, one that spanned months, if not longer. The more we uncovered, the more I realized how deeply the rot had spread. At the same time, I had to deal with my own personal aftermath. The world I'd worked so hard to build, the career I'd spent 12 years building, had been shattered in a matter of days. I kept thinking back to all the moments I had missed with my family, the late nights at the office when I should have been home. And Kate, my wife. She had been silent since the day I resigned, her eyes distant and cold whenever I spoke to her. I had always believed she understood the demands of my job, but now I was beginning to question everything. Had she known what was going on at Green Tech? Had she been a part of it? It felt like I was losing not just my career, but my marriage too. Every time I tried to talk to her about it, she seemed more and more distant, more preoccupied. It was as if she was hiding something from me, and that hurt more than anything else. But I couldn't let it consume me. Not now. I had a bigger fight ahead, and I couldn't afford to lose focus. Sharon and I were preparing a legal strategy that would bring Green Tech to its knees. We were building a case not just around the financial malfeasance, but also around my wrongful termination. If Ben and Charlotte thought they could toss me aside without consequences, they were about to learn how wrong they were. A week into the process, I received a call from Ben. He wanted to meet. It was unexpected, and I didn't know what to make of it. Was he going to try to offer me a bribe? A way to make all of this go away? Or was he just trying to salvage what was left of his reputation? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to back down. I had everything I needed to destroy him and Charlotte if they pushed me too far. I wasn't going to let them bully me into silence. I agreed to meet him at a local cafe, a neutral ground. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. Ben sat at a table in the corner, his back straight, his eyes sharp. He looked almost uncomfortable, like he wasn't used to being in a place that didn't belong to him. As I approached, he gave me a tight smile and gestured for me to sit. "I didn't expect to see you here, Evan," he said, his voice clipped. "I thought we'd already settled things." I raised an eyebrow. "Settled? You mean you thought I'd just walk away quietly after you forced me out?" "That's not how this works, Ben." He took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. "Look, I know things got out of hand. The restructuring was necessary for the future of Green Tech, but I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to offer you a fair settlement to make this go away. I'd like to put this behind us." I leaned forward, my hands resting on the table. "A fair settlement?" I repeated, barely containing my laugh. "You're the one who created this mess, Ben. You and Charlotte are the ones who thought you could steal from the company and get away with it. You're the one who forced me out with an ultimatum. You don't get to offer me a settlement to make it go away. I'm not going anywhere until I get what I'm owed." He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see the frustration growing in his eyes. "You don't understand the position I'm in," he said finally. "If this goes public, it's not just Green Tech that's in trouble. It's everyone involved. You're going to ruin everything." I sat back, my mind racing. Ben wasn't concerned about making things right. He was concerned about covering his own ass. He wasn't worried about the damage he'd done to me or the company. He was only worried about the fallout if the truth came to light. "You're right," I said calmly. "This will ruin everything. But you're the one who's going to make sure of that, Ben. You and Charlotte have been stealing from the company for months. This isn't about me anymore. This is about making sure you both pay for what you've done." He shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing. "I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've built," he said, his voice low. "I'm not going to destroy anything," I replied. "I'm going to make sure Green Tech gets back on track. I'm going to make sure the people you've hurt are taken care of. I'm going to make sure you don't get away with this." Ben stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He didn't say anything else, just walked out without another word. I watched him leave, feeling a mix of anger and satisfaction. I knew this was just the beginning, but I was ready for whatever came next. Ben had underestimated me, and now I was going to make him regret it. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed. It was Sharon. "We've got the evidence," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "We're ready to go after them." I smiled to myself. This was far from over. The following days felt like a slow build-up to something inevitable. Sharon had sent over the formal demand letter to Green Tech's legal team, outlining everything we had uncovered, every fraudulent transaction, every inflated payment, every shell company. It was a damning dossier, and I knew it would put the company in a corner. But as much as I wanted to sit back and let the lawyers handle it, something inside me kept pushing forward. I wasn't just after money anymore. I was after justice. I wanted Ben and Charlotte to pay, not just financially, but in a way that would make them realize the damage they had caused, not only to me, but to everyone who had trusted them. The next morning, I received a call from Sharon. She didn't mince words. "They've rejected our demand," she said. "They're offering you a settlement again, but it's not nearly enough. They think they can still buy you off." I felt a flash of anger. "What's their offer this time?" "A measly $500,000, she replied. "Plus, they're still trying to enforce the non-compete clause, and they want you to sign an NDA. They want this to go away quietly." I snorted in disbelief. Unbelievable. They think they can just throw money at me and shut me up? After everything they've done? "Exactly," Sharon said. "But we're not going to let them get away with it. You've got a legal right to more than that, and I'll make sure they understand that." I let out a breath, my fingers tapping against the desk as I thought about what to do next. It was tempting. $500,000 was a lot of money. But I wasn't interested in just a payoff. I wanted more than that. I wanted them to answer for their actions. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about principle, about holding people accountable. "You tell them we're not accepting a settlement," I said, my voice firm. "We're going to court." The weight of that decision settled over me. Going to court meant exposing everything. It meant months of legal battles, potentially damaging Green Tech's reputation beyond repair. But as I sat there, thinking about the way Ben had walked away from our meeting without so much as a hint of remorse, I knew there was no other choice. He wasn't going to learn his lesson without consequences. Over the next week, Sharon and I worked tirelessly on our case. The evidence was overwhelming, but we had to make sure everything was airtight. I spent hours reviewing documents, combing through financial reports, and preparing my testimony. Each new piece of evidence made my resolve even stronger. Green Tech's financials weren't just a little off. They were systematically manipulated to line Ben and Charlotte's pockets. Every document, every email, every financial record painted a picture of corporate greed and deceit. Meanwhile, my personal life was unraveling in a way that I couldn't ignore. Kate had stopped coming home at night. She was always working late or spending time with friends. The silence between us grew unbearable, and I knew something wasn't right. When I tried to talk to her, she seemed evasive, distant, like she was hiding something. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She had known about what was going on at Green Tech. She had known about Ben and Charlotte's scheme, and she hadn't said a word. I couldn't believe it. After everything we had been through, after everything we had built together, she had chosen to side with them, to protect her career and her sister's interests over the truth. The betrayal stung more than anything else. I had spent so much of my life working for Green Tech, thinking it was a way to secure a better future for my family, and now I felt like I had lost everything. That night, after another argument where Kate refused to tell me what was really going on, I finally made the decision. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The next morning, I packed a bag and went to stay in a hotel. The silence between us had become too much, and I couldn't stay in the same house any longer, knowing what I now knew. But despite everything, I wasn't going to let my personal life derail my fight for justice. The case was moving forward, and I couldn't afford to lose focus. Sharon was confident that with the evidence we had, Green Tech wouldn't be able to escape the consequences. The legal battle was about to get more intense, and I was ready for it. As the weeks passed, the pressure built. Ben and Charlotte's legal team tried every tactic in the book to delay the process, but Sharon and I were relentless. The media got wind of the situation, and soon, Green Tech found itself in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. I could see the cracks starting to form in their carefully constructed empire. They thought they could get away with it, but they hadn't accounted for someone like me, someone who had worked within the system and knew how it worked. One afternoon, as I sat in my hotel room, scrolling through the latest legal updates, my phone buzzed. It was Sharon. "They've agreed to a settlement," she said. "But it's not just money. They want to avoid the public fallout. They're offering $2.5 million, no strings attached, and they're dropping the NDA. I couldn't help but smile, though it was a bittersweet victory. This wasn't just a financial win. This was proof that the system worked. Proof that even when you're pushed out, when you're betrayed, you can still fight back and come out on top. I felt a sense of closure, but also a sense of finality. This chapter of my life was over. But it had taught me something valuable. No matter how far they push you, no matter how much they try to erase you, you always have the power to fight back. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing is worth more than any paycheck. The settlement was a relief, but it didn't come without a cost. As the paperwork was finalized, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness wash over me. I had won, yes, but at what price? The money, the legal victory, it all felt so hollow. Green Tech was a company I had helped build, a company I had sacrificed so much for, and yet in the end, it was nothing more than a battleground, a place where loyalty was disregarded in favor of ambition, and where people like me were treated like disposable assets. I still hadn't spoken to Kate since I left the house. Every time I thought about reaching out, I hesitated. The truth was, I didn't know what to say. How could I explain the depth of my betrayal? How could I look her in the eye and pretend everything was fine when I knew she had sided with Ben and Charlotte? I had always trusted her, but now I wasn't so sure. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, and every day that passed without resolution only made the wound deeper. I spent the next few days in a fog, moving from one task to the next, but never fully present. The settlement money was deposited into my account, but I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. It was a victory, yes, but it didn't fix anything. It didn't change the fact that I had lost so much along the way. My marriage was crumbling, and Green Tech was no longer the company I had once believed in. I had fought for justice, but what did that even mean when everything around me was falling apart? In the midst of all this, I received a call from Gregory Patterson, the former CFO at Green Tech. He had left the company shortly after I did, realizing that he no longer wanted to be a part of what it had become. He was working for a competitor now, and they were in the process of overhauling their operations. He needed someone with my expertise to help them restructure their systems. I sat there for a moment, the phone pressed to my ear, thinking about his offer. On one hand, it was an opportunity. a chance to rebuild, to use everything I had learned from my years at Green Tech in a fresh environment. But on the other hand, it felt like a step backward. I didn't want to be tied to the past. I didn't want to go back to the corporate world that had betrayed me. But at the same time, I needed something to do. I needed a new challenge, something to reignite my passion. "Gregory," I said, my voice steady but unsure, "I appreciate the offer, but I don't know if I'm ready to jump back into that world just yet." He was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. "I get it, Evan, but here's the thing. We're not green tech. We're not focused on squeezing every dollar out of people. We're about rebuilding, about creating something sustainable. I know what happened at Green Tech, and I know what you're capable of. We could use someone like you." There it was again, the temptation. The offer seemed genuine, and I couldn't deny that I missed the feeling of being part of something bigger than myself. The work I had done, the systems I had built, they had always been about more than just the company. They had been about making a difference, about creating something that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to do that again. "I'll think about it," I said, though I already knew what my answer would be. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, thinking about what it would mean to return to that world. Could I do it? Could I go back to corporate life without losing myself again? The truth was, I wasn't sure. I wasn't the same person I had been when I first walked into Green Tech's office all those years ago. I had learned too much, seen too much, and I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust the system again. But I also knew that I couldn't run away from everything. I couldn't keep hiding from the reality of what had happened. If I wanted to move forward, I had to make peace with the past, however painful that might be. The decision wasn't easy, but after a few days of reflection, I made my choice. I called Gregory back. "I'm in," I said. "Let's rebuild, but on our terms this time." There was a brief pause on the other end, and then Gregory's voice broke through. "You won't regret this, Evan. I promise." And just like that, I was back in the game. But this time it was different. I wasn't just fighting for a paycheck or a title. I was fighting for something I could believe in. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. As I ended the call, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the fresh start I needed. Maybe this time, I would do things my way. The first few weeks at the new company were a whirlwind. I threw myself into the work, knowing I had something to prove, to myself as much as to anyone else. Gregory had been right. This wasn't Green Tech. The culture was different. The leadership was transparent, and the focus wasn't just on profits, but on building something sustainable and ethical. It felt like a breath of fresh air after the suffocating, cutthroat atmosphere I had left behind. Still, every now and then, I'd find myself haunted by the past. The meetings I wasn't invited to at Green Tech, the coldness from Ben and Charlotte, it all still stung. But here I had a chance to start over, to do things differently. It was strange, though, how quickly I fell back into the groove of things. The systems I had built at Green Tech had given me a solid foundation, but this new company was a blank slate. It needed everything I could offer: new processes, new operational strategies, and a fresh approach to team collaboration. I knew the work would be demanding, but it felt good to feel needed again. For the first time in months, I was waking up with a sense of purpose, energized by the idea of contributing to something meaningful. Gregory and I spent long hours together, brainstorming and strategizing how to overhaul the operations department. He had vision, but I had experience, and it felt like a perfect match. We both had scars from our time at Green Tech, and I think we were both determined to make sure this new company didn't fall into the same traps. It was the kind of challenge that pushed me to grow again, to think outside the box in ways I hadn't had to for a while. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was part of a team that truly valued my input. But there was one part of this whole situation that I couldn't shake: the mess with Kate. As much as I tried to focus on the work, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at home. It felt like there was a part of my life that had been ripped out, and no matter how much I buried myself in the job, I couldn't move forward without addressing it. One evening, after another long day at the office, I found myself standing outside her apartment. I hadn't seen her in over a month, not since the night I left. I didn't know what I expected to happen. Maybe a conversation, maybe an apology, but all I knew was that I had to know the truth. I needed closure, even if it meant confronting the person I thought I knew better than anyone. When she answered the door, her eyes were tired and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. There was a strange stillness in the air between us. She stepped back, silently inviting me inside. "Evan," she said quietly, closing the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to understand why." Kate met my gaze for a moment before looking away as if the truth was too much for her to face. "I don't know what you want me to say," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I was just trying to protect you, protect us. I thought you'd be better off without knowing everything." "Without knowing what?" I pressed, feeling the weight of my own anger rise. "Without knowing that you knew about the embezzlement? That you sided with Ben and Charlotte? Kate, how could you? How could you keep that from me?" She flinched as if the words hit her harder than I intended. "I didn't want you to be involved. I thought if you knew, it would destroy you, destroy everything we'd worked for. I never wanted this for us. I thought it would be easier if I kept quiet." "You kept quiet?" The disbelief in my voice was palpable. "You chose to be complicit in all of it. You let them tear me down without even saying a word. You lied to me, Kate." The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't meet my eyes, but I saw the shame in the way her shoulders slumped. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, was a stranger to me now. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared too. I didn't want to lose everything. I stood there, struggling to breathe through the rush of emotions. This wasn't the conversation I had imagined. I thought maybe I'd get some sort of explanation, a reason to justify her actions. But there was nothing. No excuses. Just a hollow apology that I wasn't sure I could accept. I couldn't stay there any longer. "I don't think we can fix this," I said, turning toward the door. "I can't fix this." As I walked out, I felt a heaviness in my chest. Maybe it was the weight of everything I just uncovered, or maybe it was the finality of knowing that the life I had imagined for myself was gone. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive for what she had done. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep carrying this weight. I had to let go, no matter how painful it was. The next morning, I threw myself back into work, focusing on the tasks ahead. The new company was depending on me, and I couldn't afford to be distracted. The legal battle with Green Tech was still looming, but now it felt like a distant fight. I had already moved on, and as much as it hurt, I knew I was finally ready to leave the past behind. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something for myself. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. Life often forces us into difficult situations, and it's easy to feel betrayed or powerless. But remember, you always have a choice, whether to accept things as they are or to stand up for what you deserve. Trust in your abilities, protect your integrity, and never settle for less than your worth. Sometimes, the hardest moments lead to the greatest opportunities for growth and change. Let go of what weighs you down. Learn from your experiences and surround yourself with people who value and respect you. Above all, never stop moving forward, even when the path is uncertain.